All terrestrial ecosystems are quite different from aquatic ecosystems. The amount of water availability determines the type of habitat to a particular land. Terrestrial ecosystems are more complex and show great variation as compared to an aquatic ecosystem. In addition to water and air, soil directly or indirectly also forms foundation for sustaining the life on land. The physical conditions such as humidity, sunlight, wind and temperature are not uniformly distributed in the whole terrestrial habitat. The interaction of physical, climatic and biotic factors produces a wide variety of ecologic conditions on the continents and islands. Terrestrial ecosystems in their natural state are found in different types of forests, grasslands, semi-arid areas and deserts. In the previous module we discussed the forest ecosystem, and in this module we will learn different types of grassland and desert ecosystem. 3. Grassland ecosystem. Grasslands are present everywhere except Antarctica. They are found both in the middle latitude and equatorial tropical climatic zones. Grasslands are formed where there is not enough rain for the development of forest but is sufficient to support the growth of different species of grasses during the monsoon. It occupies about 20% of the Earth's surface. Grasslands are dominated by different species of grasses, legumes and composites with few trees. Figure 1. The parts of grasses and herbs above the ground dry during the summer season, and in monsoon the grass cover grows back from the rootstock and the seeds of the previous year. 3. Figure point 1. Grassland of Pabar Valley. A variety of grasses, herbs, insects, birds and mammals are adapted to highly seasonal increased growth of grasses followed by a dormant phase. The animals are able to survive in conditions where food is plentiful during rainy season and store excess food as fat that they use during the dry period when there is scarcity of food. The grassland can be further categorized into following types. 3.1. Temperate grassland. The temperate grassland climate is one of recurring drought, and much of the diversity of vegetation cover reflects differences in the amount and consistency of precipitation. Grasslands to the poorest where precipitation is lowest and the temperatures are high. These grasslands occur where the annual rainfall varies between 10 inches to 30 inches 25-75 centimeters. They mainly depend upon temperature, seasonal distribution of the rainfall and water holding capacity of the soil. The soil moisture play a key factor as it limits the microbial decomposition and recycling of nutrients. Large grassland areas occupy the interior of the North America and Eurasian continents, southern South America and Australia. Thus, native grasslands of North America, influenced by declining precipitation from east to west, consist of 3 main types distinguished by the height of the dominant species: tall grass, mixed grass, and short grass prairie. 4. 1. Tall grasses 2-3 meters, big bluestem Andropogon gerardi, switchgrass Panicum virgatum, Indian grass Sorghastrum nudens, etc. 2. Mid-sized grasses 1 to 2 meters, little bluestem Andropogon scoparius, needlegrass Stipa spartea, dropseed Sporobolus heterolepis, western wheatgrass Agropyron smithi, June grass Coleria cristata, and Indian rice grass Oryzopsis hymonoides. 3. Short grasses 0.1-0.5 meter, buffalo grass Buclodactyloids, blue gramma Baudelua gracilis, other grammas Baudelua spp. etc. The root of most species penetrate deeply up to 2 meters, and the mass of roots of the healthy perennials will be several times than the above ground parts. Forbs non-grass herbs such as composites and legumes generally constitute a small part of the producer biomass in climax grassland, but they are consistently present. Certain species are of special interest as indicators of stress. Increased grazing or drought or both tends to increase the percentage of forbs. Very extensive area of grassland, especially the tall grass prairies, have now been replaced by grain agriculture or cultivated pastures or have been invaded by woody vegetation. From southeastern Texas to southern Arizona and south into Mexico lies the desert grassland, which is similar to the short grass plains in many respects, except that the 3 on grass Aristida spp. replaces buffalo grass. The annual grasslands are confined to the Central Valley of California. It is associated with a Mediterranean climate characterized by rainy winters and hot, dry summers. Growth occurs during early spring, and most plants are dormant in summer. These steppes are usually treeless except for ribbons and patches of forest, which are divided into 4 belts of latitude from the mesic meadow steppes to semi-arid grasslands in the north to the south respectively. In the southern hemisphere, the major grasslands exist in southern Africa and southern South America known as pampas. These pampas have been modified by the introduction of European forage grasses and alfalfa Medicago sativa, and the eastern tall grass pampas have been converted to wheat and corn. In Patagonia, where annual rainfall averages about 25 centimeters, the pampas change to open steppe. 5. A well-developed community in these grasslands consists of those species which are adapted to different temperature, one group growing in the cool part of the season, spring and fall, and another in the hot part, summer. The grassland as a whole compensates for temperature fluctuations, thus extending the periods of primary production. Grasslands support a diversity of animal life dominated by herbivorous species, which includes invertebrates as well as vertebrates. The most commonly vertebrates found in these grasslands consists of large-sized grazing ungulates and burrowing mammals. The North American grasslands once were dominated by huge migratory herds of millions of bison, and the fork-consuming pronghorn antelope, Antilocarpa americana. The Eurasian steppes and the Argentine pampas lack herds of large ungulates. On the pampas, the 2 major large herbivores are the pampas deer Ozotoceros bezoardicus and, farther south, the guanaco Llama guanico, a small relative of the camel. These species, however, are greatly reduced in number compared to historical times. Grasslands evolved under the selective pressure of grazing. Thus, up to a point, grazing stimulates primary production. The most prominent grazers are large-sized herbivores and the major consumers are invertebrates. The heaviest consumption takes place below ground, where the dominant herbivores are nematodes. The most visible feature of grassland is the tall, green, ephemeral herbaceous growth that develops in spring and dies back in autumn. The ground layer and the below-ground root layer are the other 2 major strata of grasslands. The highly developed root layer can make up more than half the total plant biomass and typically extends fairly deep into the soil. Dominant soils of the grasslands are mollisols with a relatively thick, dark brown to black surface horizon that is rich in organic matter. Soils typically become thinner and pale in the drier regions. This is due to the fact that less organic material is incorporated into the surface horizon. As the grasses are short-lived compared with trees, a large amount of organic matter is added to the soil. The first phase of the decay is rapid, resulting in little litter but much humus. In other words, humification is rapid, but mineralization is slow. Consequently, the grassland soil may contain 5 to 10 times more humus than forest soil. The dark humus-rich grassland soil of Iowa is among those best suited. 6. For the growing of corn, wheat, and other grains. 3.2. 3.2. Tropical savanna. The term savanna was initially used to describe the treeless areas of South America, is now generally used to explain vegetation types in the drier tropics and subtropics and characterized by a ground cover of grasses with few shrubs or trees. Savanna includes an array of vegetation types representing a continuum of increasing cover of woody vegetation, from open grassland to widely spaced shrubs or trees or woodland. Tropical savannas, grassland with scattered trees or clumps of trees, are found in warm regions with 40 to 60 inches, 100–150 centimeters, of rainfall but with 1 or 2 prolonged dry seasons, and fires are the important part of the environment. The largest area of this type is in Central and Eastern Africa, but sizable tropical savannas or grasslands also occurs in South America and Australia. The physiognomic diversity of the savanna vegetation reflects the different climatic conditions occurring throughout this widely distributed ecosystem. A function of both rainfall, amount and distribution, and soil, its texture, structure, and water holding capacity control the density of woody vegetation. The average monthly temperatures usually do not fall below 18 degrees Celsius. However, during the coldest seasons in highland areas the temperatures can fall below 18°C. The nature of the vegetation cover can be determined by the amount and seasonality of precipitation than by temperature. Because both trees and grass must be resistant to both drought and fire, the number of species in the vegetation is not large, in sharp contrast to adjacent forests. Grasses belonging to such genera as Panicum, Pennisetum, Andropogon, and Imperata provide the dominant cover, whereas the scattered trees are of entirely different species from those of tropical forests. In African, the thorny and picturesque acacias and other leguminous trees and shrubs, the large trunk baobab trees, Adansonia digitata, arborescent euphorbias, and palm dot the landscape. Often, single species of both grass and trees may be dominant over larger areas. Savannas can support a large and varied assemblage of herbivores, invertebrate and 7. Vertebrate. In number and variety, the population of hoofed mammals of the African savanna is not exceeded anywhere in the world. Antelope, zebra and giraffe graze and browse and are sought by lions and other predators in areas. Some species, such as the wildebeest and zebra, are migratory during the dry season. Insects are the most abundant in savanna during rainy season, including flies, grasshoppers, locusts, crickets, carabid beetles, ants, and detritus-feeding dung beetles and termites. Mound-building termites excavate and move tons of soil, mixing mineral soil with organic matter. Living on the ungulate fauna is an array of carnivores including the lion, leopard, cheetah, hyena, and wild dog. Scavengers, including vultures and jackals, subsist on leftover prey. 4. Indian grassland. The grasslands are vegetation formations that are generally found in temperate climates. In India, they are found mainly in the high Himalayas. The rest of India's grasslands are mainly composed of steppes and savannas. Steppe formations occupy large areas of sandy and saline soil in western Rajasthan, where the climate is semi-arid. Average rainfall is less than 200 millimeters a year with a dry season of 10 to 11 months and a large variation in rainfall. The soil is always exposed, sometimes rocky but more often sandy with fixed or mobile dunes. Forage is available only during the brief wet season. The grass layer is sparse and consists mainly of annual grass species. In the central and eastern parts of Rajasthan, where the rainfall is about 500 millimeters per year and the dry season is of 6 to 8 months, dry savanna grazing ecosystems have developed. The light shade cast by the sparse population of trees like Prosopis cineraria, figure 2, favors the growth of the grasses, which in the best watered areas can reach up to a height of 100 centimeters to 120 centimeters. 8. Figure point 2, Prosopis cineraria. The major difference that occurs between steppes and savannas is that steppe grassland provides forage to animals only during the short period of wet season, whereas the savannas provide forage to animals not only during the wet season but also to some extent during dry season through regrowth of the grasses. Under heavy grazing pressure, the quality of grasslands also deteriorates rapidly. In arid to semi-arid tracts, active growth of vegetation is triggered each year by the advent of the monsoon during June or early July. The biomass increases to its peak around September to October. Fruiting is completed by September and subsequently the plants dry up. In subtropical parts of northern India which receive winter rains, there is usually a second flux of growth in December and January. 5. Deserts. True deserts are primarily subtropical, occurring generally in climates drier than those of semi-desert scrub. Deserts are formed in regions with less than 25 centimeters of annual rainfall, or sometimes in hot regions where there is more rainfall, but unevenly distributed in the annual cycle. Plant forms range from typical low shrubs to some very distinctive plants and lichens in area with fog. True deserts are always poor both in flora and fauna. The vast land area of Sahara in northern Africa, figure 3. True deserts are always poor both in flora and fauna. The vast land area of Sahara in northern Africa, figure 3, the Arabian Peninsula, the west coast of South America and parts of Australia, India and southwestern United States are typical areas of true deserts. 9. The scarcity is due to high subtropical pressure is in Sahara and Australian desert sea, geographical position in rain shadows, as in western North American desert sea, high elevation is in Tibetan, Bolivian and Gobi deserts. Most deserts receive some rain during the year and have at least a sparse cover of vegetation, unless the edaphic conditions of the substrate happen to be especially unfavorable, as with moving sand dunes. Apparently the only place where little or no rain falls is located in the central Sahara Desert in northern Chile. Figure point 3, Sahara Desert. When deserts are irrigated and water is no longer a limiting factor, the type of soil becomes a prime consideration. When the texture and nutrient content of the soil are favorable, irrigated deserts can be extremely productive because of the large amount of sunlight they receive. However, the cost per kilogram of food produced may be high because of the high cost of developing and maintaining irrigation system. 3 life forms of the plants are adapted to desert. The annuals, which avoid drought by growing only when there is adequate moisture. The stem succulents, such as the cacti, which have the moisture-conserving CAM photosynthesis and also store water. The desert shrubs, which have numerous branches ramifying from a short basal trunk bearing thick small leaves that are shed during the prolonged dry periods. 1.0. Although arbitrary, it is convenient to recognize 2 types of deserts on the basis of temperature. 5.1. Hot deserts and cool deserts. In North America, the creosote bush Lariat tridentate is a widespread dominant of the southwestern hot desert, and sagebrush artemisia is the chief plant over the large area of the more northern cool deserts of the Great Basin. Burr sage franceria is also widespread in southern areas, whereas, at higher altitudes, where there is a little more moisture, the giant saguaro cactus Carnegie gigantea and Paulovert parkinsonia are conspicuous. The succulent life forms including the cacti and the arborescent yuccas and agaves, reach their greatest development in Mexican desert. Some species of this type extend into the shrub deserts of Arizona and California, but this life form is unimportant in the cool desert. In all deserts, annual forbs and grasses may make quite a show during brief wet periods. The extensive bare ground in deserts is not necessarily free of plants. Mosses, algae and lichens may be present, and on sand and other finely divided soil, they may form the stabilized crust. Desert animals and plants are adapted in various ways to the lack of water. Reptiles and some insects are pre-adapted because of their relatively impervious integuments and dry excretion, uric acid and guanine. Desert insects are waterproofed with substances that remain impermeable at high temperature. Evaporation from respiration is minimized by internally invaginated spherical system. It should be pointed out that production of metabolic water, often the only water available, is not in itself an adaptation. It is the conservation of this water that is adaptive, as is the ability to produce more metabolic water at low humidity in the case of tenebrionid beetles, a characteristic desert group. Mammals are not very well adapted as a group because they excrete urea, which involves loss of much water, yet certain species are adapted remarkably. Among these desert mammals are rodents of the family Heteromyidae and Dipodidae, especially the kangaroo rat Dipodomys figure 4 and the pocket mouse Perignathus of the New World Desert and the Jerboa dipus of Old World deserts. 1.1. Figure point 4. Kangaroo rat. These animals can live indefinitely on dry seeds and do not require drinking water. They remain in burrows during the day and conserve water by excreting very concentrated urine and by not using water to regulate their body temperature. Thus, the adaptation of desert by these rodents is as much behavioral as physiological. Other desert rodents such as wood rats Neotoma cannot live solely on dry food but survives in part of the desert by consuming succulent cacti or other plants that store water. Figure point 5. Camel. Even the camel Camelus figure 5 must drink water, but camels can endure long periods without water because their body tissue can tolerate an elevation of body temperature and a degree of dehydration that would be fatal to most animals. Despite belief, camel does not store water in their humps. 1.2. 6. Indian deserts. The Indian desert figure 6 forms the east end of the greatest desert district of the world, extending from the Atlantic coast of Africa including the Sahara, part of Arabia, South Persia and Baluchistan. The climate of this region is characterized by excessive drought, the rainfall being scanty and irregular. The winter rains of northern India rarely penetrate into the region, and there is thus only rainy season. The cold season starts from about the middle of November to the middle of March. This season is characterized by extreme variations of temperature, and the temperature is frequently below freezing point at night. During April, May and June the heat is intense, trying and scorching winds prevail with great desiccating action. The relative humidity of the atmosphere is always low. Figure point 6. Indian Thar Desert in Rajasthan. Under such circumstances, germination of seeds is impossible. So, Indian desert is hostile to only plant vegetation which bears special adaptations to establish them. These adaptations in general enable the plant to obtain water and retain it. The bulk of the vegetation consists of a kind of scrub that consists of shrubs and perennial herbs. These scrubs are capable to resist great drought season. There are a few trees and these are stunted and generally thorny or prickly, thus protecting themselves against plant-feeding animals. The desert plants may be divided into 2 main groups. The first group includes those plants which directly depend upon rain and second group depending on the presence of subterranean water. The first group, 1.3, consists of the ephemerals and the rain perennials. The ephemerals are delicate annuals, free from any xerophilous adaptations. They appear almost immediately after rain, develop flowers and fruits in an incredibly short time and die as soon as the surface layer of the soil dries up. The rain perennials are visible above the ground only during the rainy season, but have a perennial underground stem. Bulbous monocotyledons, of which Dipcady erythroum is a representative form in this region. Various cyperaceae species also grow. By far the largest number of indigenous plants, and they are capable of absorbing water from deep below the surface of the ground by means of a well-developed root system, the main part of which generally consists of a slender, woody taproot of extraordinary length. The plants belonging to this category are more or less woody perennials. Animals are also adapted according to the desert conditions. Among reptiles there are 2 species of Testudines loricata, 18 species of lizards, and 18 species of snakes. Of the lizards, some species like Calotes versicolor, Uromastix dardwicki are predatory on the desert locust inhabiting localized areas in Thar Desert. Among predominant predatory birds are 2 species of the vultures, namely, Gypes bengalensis and the white vulture, Neophron. The mammalian fauna of Indian deserts includes many species, some of which are rat-tailed bat, hedgehog, Indian hairy-footed gerbil, wild boar, jungle cats and panthers. 7. Summary. Terrestrial ecosystems are more complex and show great variation as compared to an aquatic ecosystem. The interaction of physical, climate and biotic factors produces a wide variety of ecologic conditions on the continents and islands. Terrestrial ecosystems in their natural state are found in different types of forests, grasslands, semi-arid areas and deserts. Grasslands are present everywhere except Antarctica. They are found both in the middle latitude and equatorial tropical climatic zones. Grasslands are formed where there is not enough rain for the development of forest. 1-4. But are sufficient to support the growth of different species of grasses during the monsoon. The grassland can be further categorized as temperate grassland and tropical savanna. The temperate grassland climate is one of recurring drought, and much of the diversity of vegetation cover reflects differences in the amount and consistency of precipitation. Large grassland areas occupy the interior of the North America and Eurasian continents, southern South America and Australia. Savanna includes assemblage of different vegetation types representing a gradual increase in cover of woody vegetation from open grassland to widely spaced shrubs or trees into woodland. Tropical savannas are found in warm regions with 40 to 60 inches of rainfall but with 1 or 2 prolonged dry seasons. The largest area of this type is in Central and Eastern Africa, but sizable tropical savannas or grasslands also occurs in South America and Australia. In India, grasslands are mainly composed of steppes and savannas. Steppe formations occupy large areas of sandy and saline soil in western Rajasthan, where the climate is semi-arid. Average rainfall is less than 200 millimeters a year. True deserts are primarily subtropical, occurring generally in climates drier than those of semi-desert scrub. Deserts are formed in regions with less than 25 centimeters of annual rainfall, or sometimes in hot regions where there is more rainfall, but unevenly distributed in the annual cycle. True deserts are always poor both in flora and fauna. The vast land area of Sahara in northern Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, the west coast of South America, and parts of Australia, India and southwestern United States are typical areas of true deserts. 1-5.